Our first reader tonight is Taylor Byas, a Black Chicago native currently living in Cincinnati, Ohio, where she is now a third-year PhD student and Yates Scholar at the University of Cincinnati and an assistant features editor for The Rumpet. She is the first place winner of the 2020 Poetry Superhighway, the 2020 Frontier Poetry Award for New Poets Contest, the 2021 Adrienne Rich Poetry Prize, and a finalist for the 2020 Frontier Open Prize. She is the author of the chapbook Bloodworm from Variant Lit, a second chapbook, Shudder, forthcoming from Madhouse Press, and her debut full-length, I Done Clicked My Heels 3 Times, forthcoming from Soft Skull Press in the spring of 2023. She is represented by Rena Rossner of the Deborah Harris Agency. Welcome, Taylor. I'm so excited.
Thank you so much, Marissa, and thank you, other Marissa, for having me for your incredible launch. I'm so excited to be here tonight with you and all these other incredible readers, and to everyone who's also here in the audience. So I'm gonna read 3 poems, and I'm gonna start with Sculpture Study number 1, Brooklyn, New York. A woman's real first lesson about her body is nothing to write home about. The second lesson, one of colonization. It happens in a big city, the sidewalks gone half dust, and the woman believing, for once, there is something for her to claim. This complex ecosystem of space, improvised measurements to guess by, the swing of a tote bag, a soft circumference of hair. The woman is eyeing her way to the J train when a man made faceless by the crowd grabs her ass. There are 2 options, be crazy or be quiet while the incident reworks the DNA. There is one option, because the silence sires some sort of madness later. Right there on the corner, she stops, marbles against the summer heat, eases her hair from its rubber band to let something free. The faceless man hurts her to still life, an inanimate thing bedazzled in all of the city's wet offerings, the day's earlier drizzle still drying, the humid air relentless with stickiness. What are we allowed to be when we hurt in public, human or statue? As if she thinks this into existence, the evening sun glosses her brown skin in a coat of bronze and she grows into the ground. No one can tell the difference as they shuffle around her, give her extra space. Look how gentle they are when there is no harm to be done. Okay. Second poem is titled Love Letter to the Spring Moon. When the black curtains for the bedroom came, I blacked you out like the night you fight in. Forgive me, but I'm still working through it in therapy. Lately, I've been so sudden with my decisions. Cut my braids out of my head a month early, put a deadline on love. I'm leaving space for nothing but blame in the new year, and this year is no different. I never told you about the great hurt between us. Me, 13 and thinking I needed you to speak back to me. Back then, I skipped my wishes to you like stones, slept in the overhang of mornings that relieved your shift. I'm angry, I still don't know what to call the thing between us. Were you friend or sister? The first lover to leave when I became too much. I've surrendered to the half-truth. Men remind me of you. The mixed messages, you in my bed every night and nothing ever to say of it. My therapist says I'm projecting, but goes silent when I say you've been doing it to me my whole life. At night, I get moody and waiting, anxious for you to ask me how I've been, so anxious that I pay a therapist to ask me now instead. The harder and fuller truth, men have abandoned me and I never heard from you. I didn't know love was an ancestor of quietude. Of all things love, I'm still learning. Okay, and then the last poem I'm going to read is After the Car Accident. I slow traffic with my worry, kneeling and checking my car for damage. My palm on its feverish hood like a mother checking a child's temperature in the heat of the sun doubling its sickness. In the black paint's warped reflection, I could be mistaken for my father. This froggish position, squatting on my toes, my forehead becoming his in its rumpled state, even our concern, biological, shared, right down to the way we squint at an injured thing, the way we have only temporary fixes for what is broken. I list the damages out loud, to no one, to the metronome of my hazard lights, to convince myself I've done it. This too is hereditary, struggling with admissions of guilt. On the phone with the insurance company, I begin to unbraid a legacy of blamelessness. Yes, I was operating my vehicle alone. The car was parked and empty when I hit it. This is just another version of the tree falling in the forest question. If no one saw me hit the car, did I do it? If my father never apologized on our old phone calls, did he truly wound me? The insurance agent on the phone is asking questions, following the printed script taped next to her computer screen. Is the car drivable? Are you hurt? I don't know which question I'm answering anymore, and it doesn't matter. Yes, it comes pouring out of me like smoke from a car's underbelly, the hiss of air finding the path of least resistance. Yes, yes, yes. Thank you.
Thank you, Taylor. That was beautiful. Our next reader is Courtney Lamar Charleston, the author of Telepathologies from Saturnalia Books in 2017 and Doppelgangbanger from Haymarket Books in 2021. He was awarded a 2017 Ruth Lilly and Dorothy Sargent Rosenberg Fellowship from the Poetry Foundation, and he has also received fellowships from Cave Canem and the New Jersey State Council on the Arts. Winner of a Pushcart Prize, his poems have appeared in Poetry, the American Poetry Review, the Kenyon Review, Granta, The Nation, and elsewhere. He serves as a poetry editor at The Rumpus and on the editorial board at Alice Jane's Books. Please welcome Courtney. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for the introduction, Marissa. I didn't think about the two Marissa thing tonight, so I have to reorient myself every time, but thank you so much. I appreciate it. And I'm really happy and excited to be here with my fellow poets and readers this evening and everyone out there who's joining us virtually from all over to celebrate the arrival of Marisa Siegel's new book. And so, yeah, this is just a joyous night. I couldn't miss it at all. And I was really thrilled when Marissa asked me to be a part of it. So thanks, Marissa. I have two poems that I'll be reading, both from my latest collection. The first of which is titled Still Life with Young Black Woman's Face Etched into a School Desk. And it has an epigraph to begin from Lauryn Hill. Everything is everything. What is meant to be will be. After winter must come spring. Change, it comes eventually. Locks felled like piano wires of rain over brown eyes. This is what I remember most clearly. And her name, true. Either Iman, spelled like a declaration, or Yiman, spelled like a question, and one to which I must admit that I don't know. Not much, not a thing at all. We are, or were, just a bit too young to fathom even a fraction of the Lord's rationale for the workings of the world. During weekday mass, we said our prayers as taught and went back to class, our uniforms ironed onto our very personalities, hurriedly, with wrinkles setting into awkward creases. This is to say we knew when to obey, which was almost always, and we knew when to act out of our skin in those thin moments when, in the instinct of young color, we clapped our hands to the beat, sang along to what some right-winger would label obscenity, being kids first, and being satisfied with what that meant for 3 or 4 minutes at a time. About her life, I didn't know much or why. Her grandmother was her guardian, arching over her like the vaults of a church. I filed that into a manila folder, how a social worker might, except I wouldn't truly know, not deep into the bloody business of life back then, though there were always the gun songs blazing in the night like a waste of a good guitar. There were always the car alarms and the sirens and the sneaker prints stamped into the sidewalk near 83rd and Yates, a running stride. As they say, everything is everything, or it was, before it came apart at the fringes beyond our reaching hands, like dread hairs gone astray at the tips from touching too much water. To think she could be a ghost now by any number of means, for any reason, good or not, accidentally, like a pregnancy, or planned, like a pregnancy, and me, filled with so much blood, aging color, making a declaration spelled, maybe, like her name. I, man. She, what? Another girl gone, a whisper in the alley, reclusive musician, public defender, perhaps. I want to believe she's somewhere watching the nightly news right now, asking a question spelled like her name might be, the air empty of any answer, her mind wandering what happened to the sweet little boy with the gap in his teeth, if everything is everything, like it was, like it ain't and never really been, because the wheels on that yellow bus went round and round, not stopping even on a drop-off, because the 60 seconds from that door to the next one were our only allowed outside, all times otherwise spent locked inside, school, house, or hallelujah. So have mercy on us. Hope we were meant to be. And for my final poem, this one is titled Trigonometry. For you, the first triangle, Father and Son and Holy Ghost. And you hear from everybody Southern fried in your life, the devil be a master mimic, be a mathematician speaking the language of the boot that kicked him out of those pearly gates. And you're smart, so you take notes. Sanctuary sits between 108th and 109th Streets on Halsted. That's in the hundreds. High numbers. Too many names of dead boys for you to count. And your church sits locked behind an iron gate, black like both sides it divides. Both sides root for a basketball team that ran the triangle offense all the way to glory. And Jordan is God to this day. And people have died for his feet. So many over the years, nobody counts. And Chicago is the angle between sides, between brothers, a tangent of death. You question if the letters in your textbook are pronounced sign or sin. You know the devil be a shapeshifter. Nothing about this particular triangle is right. You're smart. You take notes. See that same shape in your history class drawn in red, a long trail of blood between Africa, Europe, and America that gives the ocean a crooked mouth on the map. It speaks to you, begs an old practiced recall. Slaves, obey thy masters, and you're smart. So you realize that all of you Southern frieds have been had, are owned to this very day. It's all algebra, trig, you say, jotting your name boldly atop your test. That test itself being just another A plus, plus, plus. Thank you.
Thank you. That was so beautiful. Oh. Our next poet is Molly Spencer. A poet, critic, and editor, her debut collection, If the House, won the Brittingham Prize, judged by Carl Phillips. A second collection, Hinge, won the Crab Orchard Open Competition, judged by Allison Joseph. Molly's poetry has appeared in Blackbird, Field, New England Review, Plowshares, and Prairie Schooner. Her critical writing has appeared at Colorado Review, the Georgia Review, Kenyon Review, the Writers Chronicle, and the Rumpus, where she is a senior poetry editor. She teaches writing at the University of Michigan's Gerald R. Ford School of Public Policy. Welcome, Molly.
Thank you so much, Marissa. And thank you, Marissa, for having me here tonight. I am so happy to be here celebrating Fixed Stars and to be in such good company with all these poets whose work I admire so much. I'll be reading from the title series of my third manuscript, which I finished up over the summer. It's called Invitatory, which is a word that denotes an invitation and is also the name of the prayer that's the morning call to prayer in the Roman Catholic Church that I was raised in and which I have since abandoned. And I think, as far as I know, the manuscript has been a way for me to think about how to keep answering the invitation of this world and this life, and of motherhood too, as my kids are actually now getting to the point where they're starting to leave home. So these are all selections from Invitatory. Considering our momentary nearness, the planet we can't find but know is there, the size of 10 Earths, because it pulls on everything. Field and edge of field, light and wing bone, the far stones of other moons, something dropped in the night. Considering the moon's grip on the snarled sea, the fraught raft into which a father lowers his child, a slender prayer, shoreless in his mouth, have mercy. The green untroubled heave of waves, considering all the words forgone. Once I stood in my kitchen and the earth skipped a beat, skidded, slipped, then held as the radio droned the day's death count as I browned the meat. Once another body formed in mine, raft adrift on my waters. Her spine a primordial string of stones, alluvial, curved shore of stranded things. How she lengthens now into the green of coming summer, easy sapling stride, sunlit, backhand shadow of her, nearer to me now than her swung arms as she walks on, a word broken out of me, trailing flesh and song. You ask me how I am. If I said sand in the spine of a book, if I said bone set common to your roadside, early meadow rue, desiring damp shade at wood's edge and stillness, hanging its slow sepals down, petalless, untouched, sometimes called two houses. And the floods drape over fields and lifetimes, end of winter, and the gunman kills 50 at prayer while we sleep. And here, beneath this latest and most tenuous roof, I am eyeing the door. I am abandoning them slowly, their indelible skin, their 6 blue eyes in all. What I mean is that their cries tug at my ribs, only loosely now, that my eyes are cast far off. Now 39 found dead in a refrigerated truck, a child in a cage, 1,000 children in 1,000 cages. This is the world I brought them to by way of my own bleak body, ladder of. World of stone and churning waters, fire at the rim, shackle and hunger, each bridge, a tremble. Only world I had to give, swerve in the road where the tree once stood. And this is time, and time passing. All those times I looked at them in the rear view and said no more questions for a while. By now they must know there is a bird who lays her eggs in another bird's nest, then flies off to follow her hunger. You ask me, are you happy? Mornings, I read and get some words down, as I have always done. Sundays, fill the lamps with oil, another week's light. Though quiet, I am not indifferent, not seen through, not sure, awaiting. I parse again this distance, light on a slow river. I have not forgotten how tenderly you unpinned my hair. This is the last selection from the series that I'll read, and it's also an ekphrasis of Henry Osawa Tanner's painting, Annunciation. Dawn again, and the birds of oblivion sing of all hungers. Each day I wake to a pillar of light, kindling the room into being once more. A crease in the rug, someone's future stumble, the pale melt of bedclothes at my thighs. Mine is not the face of peace, but of the found out. The lamp's diminutive thorn of light sharpens at my bedside. A whole world waiting again for my yes. Thank you.
Thank you, Molly. Our next reader is Victoria Chang. Her most recent poetry book is Obit from Copper Canyon Press. Her book of hybrid essays, Dear Memory, was published by Milkweed Editions in 2021, and her forthcoming book of poems, The Trees Witness Everything, will be published by Copper Canyon Press in April. She lives in Los Angeles and serves as core faculty member within the Antioch Low Residency MFA program. Welcome, Victoria.
Thank you. So nice to be here and to be celebrating Marissa's new book, and so nice to be amongst wonderful friends and enjoying poetry on a Friday afternoon or evening. Thank you, Molly. That was so wonderful. I kind of wish I had picked out some of my new ekphrastic poems to read in response to yours, but I'm going to stick to my original script. So I'm just going to read a couple poems. I'm going to set my own timer really quickly just so I make sure I don't read too long. And I'll just start with a poem from my book Obit, and then I'll read some small tiny poems from The Trees Witness Everything. My father's frontal lobe died unpeacefully of a stroke on June 24th, 2009 at Scripps Memorial Hospital in San Diego, California. Born January 20th, 1940, the frontal lobe enjoyed a good life. The frontal lobe loved being the boss. It tried to talk again, but someone put a bag over it. When the frontal lobe died, it sucked in its lips like a window pulled shut. At the funeral for his words, my father wouldn't stop talking, and his love passed through me, fell onto the ground that wasn't there. I could hear someone stomping their feet. The body is as confusing as language. Was the frontal lobe having a tantrum or dancing? When I took my father's phone away, his words died in the plastic coffin. At the funeral for his words, we argued about my miscarriage. It's not really a baby, he said. I ran out of words, stomped out to shake the dead baby awake. I thought of the tech who put the wand down, quietly left the room when she couldn't find the heartbeat. I understood then that darkness is falling without an end. That darkness is not the absorption of color, but the absorption of language. So I'll just read some tiny poems from this new little skinny book that is coming out, and it's called The Trees Witness Everything. And really, they're just all poems in various syllabics, and they're really difficult to write because of the syllabics. And then they also, I put another constraint on myself. I used W.S. Merwin's titles as my titles. So these are all his titles. I'll just read a few of these, and they're really short. Far along in the story, once I sat in rain, opened my mouth to the sky. I yearned to be changed, but each drop was a small knife. At first I fainted, but when I woke up, all the ticking had gone and all the centuries were won. My choices no longer hurt. Losing a language. We were born with a large door on our backs. When will we know if it opens? Green fields. I was supposed to return to the fields daily. I haven't been there since birth. On some nights, I smell smoke that I think is God calling me. But when I follow, there's just a clothesline with half a life clipped on it, drying in the sun. Convenience. Youth stretches over everything, can be used once, then we turn it inside out. The cold before the moonrise. The moon is alone, always in the first person. The days are dark. When it shines on my face, it leaves white scribbles. I used to think the moon was illiterate. Horses. The way their eyes stare, sometimes I wonder if we are really hollow inside. First sight. I see an outline of you everywhere I look. We spend our lives trying to see our insides. Have you ever watched the trees turn black before the sky? Prophecy. I want to believe that each of us has a note, that at the end of the year, the stars do turn off. There's so much suffering, but ask for proof, and I have none. Snowfall. We say the snow falls, but it really seizes because it is light. It takes 7 years to grab. By the time it does, the old wars are over, and my mother is dead. But it lands on the new wars, melts on a different mother. Still morning. No mornings are still. The newly dead move the most. They force flowers to dilate. And let me check. I'll just read one more. I'll skip the last one. I wrote these longer things in the middle of this book when I went to Marfa, Texas, and I was supposed to be writing, but I didn't really feel like writing. So my friend who was at a different writing residency started writing me epistolary poems and said, you must do something besides nothing. So I started writing these letters back to him, and then I took away the epistolary. So this is just one of them. And I'll read, let's see. Yeah, I think I'll just read one, and then I'll let somebody else go. Let me pick which one. Maybe I'll read, okay, maybe I'll read this one. I'm going to skip one just so you know, the interpreters. Yesterday, while looking for the owl, I met a gelding. The horse was so still that it must have been time. I almost missed it because I didn't know I could see time. Time is the only thing that doesn't move when it moves. I stood at the fence, half hoping the horse would come over, half hoping I was the horse. I made noises with my feet. The horse turned its head to me. What are days for? Days are where we live. They are to be happy in. Where can we live but days, wrote Larkin. My day was this horse. This horse is all my days with its bruises, tears, thin, overworked body. I pay all my debts to this horse. This horse is also all the hours of my life that are unlived. It is all human suffering at once. The horse knows this and doesn't move, doesn't come near me because suffering cannot be touched. At the courthouse, a woman saw me looking up at the tree. No owls today, she said. 2 live up there. This whole time, I had only been looking for one. One is my life, and the other is what it could have been. Thank you.
Thank you, Victoria. I loved that section in the middle with those short, punchy syllabics. That was really cool. Thank you for sharing those. Our next poet is Kava Akbar. And let me switch my screens here so I can read you his tremendous bio. His poems appear in the New Yorker, the New York Times, the Paris Review, Best American Poetry, and elsewhere. His second full-length volume of poetry, Pilgrim Bell, was published by Grey Wolf in August of 2021. His debut, Calling a Wolf, is out now with Alice James in the US and Penguin in the UK. He's also the author of the chapbook, Portrait of the Alcoholic, published in 2016 by Sibling Rivalry Press. In 2022, Penguin Classics will publish a new anthology edited by Kava, the Penguin Book of Spiritual Verse, 100 Poets on the Divine. Kava was born in Tehran, Iran, and teaches at Purdue University and in the low residency MFA programs at Randolph College and Warren Wilson. And he is poetry editor at The Nation. Please welcome Kaveh.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for that, Marissa. And thank you so much for everyone else for the company of your poems. Thank you to Marisa Siegel for bringing us together. It's an extraordinary privilege to be among all of you guys and to be here celebrating Marissa's book. I know that the ostensible conceit of our being here is to gas Marissa up about how good this book is, but it really I love Marissa, and I would have loved it if she had written like an 8 out of 10. You know what I mean? Like I would have loved her, you know, but she wrote this like this is like a good 10 out of 10. Like it blew me away. It truly blew me away when I read it the first time, and I've come back to it a handful of times. I'm sure it's evolved since I last saw it, but the way that Marissa puts a kind of strain on the language to signify it being insufficient for what she's up to, right? Like the emotional precipitant is too momentous for the medium assigned to record it, right? And the way that she has her language buckle under that weight is just so dazzling and good. And I'm just so excited for people to read this book. And I would really like to just like, you know, read her poems, but I also don't want to like take away from her steam. But I did want to read, this is a poem, not by me, but a poem by the poet Jean Valentine that I thought about as I was like revisiting Marissa's book. I should say I'm in the car. Me and my dear friend, transcendent American poet and multi-hyphenate Evie Ewing are traveling from Chicago to Iowa right now. So I apologize for being in the car, but hopefully you guys can hear me okay. But yeah, so I'm just gonna share a poem by Jean Valentine that I also think does some of that thing where it's like pointing to the insufficiency of the language, right? And it's sort of like pointing to, and it's sort of rupturing in some of these ways. So it's kind of, I don't know, it's kin to Fixed Stars. So this poem is called I Came to You. And it's, again, not by me, but it's by the poet Jean Valentine. I came to you. I came to you, Lord, because of the fucking reticence of the world. No, not the world, not reticence. Oh, Lord, come, Lord, come. We were sad on the ground. Lord, come. We were sad on the ground. Just that pivot from like beginning in this kind of liturgical address to just being like, ah, shit, like this clearly isn't working. Like she has that rhetorical hesitancy and she starts like correcting herself. Anyways, it just makes it made me think about fixed stars. I think those two poems live in the same sort of like, I don't know, cordon of my brain. I'm just gonna read one poem from my book and then I'll cede the floor to my betters. This poem is called Reading Fetixod in a Pandemic. Title is a lie. I can't read Farsi. Maharche roke boyad as das dehte bashim as das dadim. I can make out, we lose, we lose. I type it into a translation app. We have lost everything we need to lose. In between what I read and what is written, need, everything. Here, the waving flag. Here, the other world. Because we need mail, people die. Because we need groceries, people die. I write, we need, knowing we dilutes my responsibility, like watercolors dipped in a fast river. Get behind me, English. When I text Maharche roke boyad as das dehte bashim as das dadim to my dad, he writes back, we have lost whatever we had to lose. Hammering pentameter, whatever we had. People die because they look like him. My uncle jailed, his daughter killed. This is a real fact too wretched for letters. And yet, my uncle jailed, his daughter killed. Waving world, the other flag, there is room in the language for being without language. So much of wet is cold. So much of diamond is light. I want both my countries to be right to fear me. We have lost whatever we had to lose. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Thank you. That was really spectacular. And our next poet is Maggie Smith, the author of several books, including Good Bones and the national bestsellers Goldenrod and Keep Moving. Her poems and essays have appeared in the New York Times, the New Yorker, the Southern Review, the Guardian, the Paris Review, the Washington Post, and the Best American Poetry. Smith is on the MFA faculty of the Naslund Mann Graduate School of Writing and serves as an editor-at-large for the Kenyon Review. Welcome.
Thank you, Marissa. And thank you, other Marissa, which I say because I'm the other Maggie Smith. And so there's like no shame in being the other one or like not that one. I take pride. It's an honor to be here and to spend my Friday night in Ohio with all of you. I wish we were all in a room together. I wish we were all at Books Are Magic together, but this is the next best thing. So congrats and thank you. I'm just going to read 3 poems from Goldenrod. The first one is called The Hum. It's not a question without the mark. How do we live with trust in a world that will continue to betray us? Hear my voice, not lift at the end. How do we trust when we continue to be betrayed? For the first time, I doubt we'll find our way back, but how can we not see how the terminal mark allows a question to dress as statement and vice versa? Sometimes, if I am quiet and still, I can hear a small hum inside me, an appliance left running. Years ago, I thought it was coming from my bones. The hum kept me company, and I thought, thank God for bones, for the fidelity of bones. They'll be there until the end, and then some. Now what? How to continue? I've started calling the hum the soul. Today I have to hold my breath to hear it. What question does it keep not asking and not asking, never changing its pitch? How do I answer? And this poem I felt like was just a poem that I liked and got, and it was sort of for no one else, but I put it in the book for me. And then Dana Levin said it was her favorite poem in the book, and now it's one of my favorites because Dana is one of my favorites. Isn't it funny how that happens? The title is My Daughter's Birthday, December 18th, 2008. For just a fraction of a moment that afternoon, if we think of time as being a whole, you were the newest person in the world. You were the emptiest vessel on earth, knowing nothing of this place or of yourself, that you even were a self, that a self was something one could be, that one could be at all, and what was being? For that narrowest sliver of a whole, you were the least experienced person on earth, and then you weren't. You knew me before you knew your own body, what to do with your hands, your pink fists battering your face. We swaddled you as if against that confusion, though I tell you, that confusion never leaves. The body remains a house unaware of its rooms. And then just one more. This is sort of a, I don't know, I guess I would call it a half-ass guzzle, which I realize isn't a form, but it doesn't have all of the things it should have. It has like the pieces I felt like using. It's called Joke, and it's not very funny. And what I think is a dream, I look at some manifestation of the past and say, I know you're not real. Someone has to. And as most dream things do, the past shapeshifts, reconstitutes with new eyes and a new haircut, the past made over, and then I forget its name. I forget what I'm doing with the past. What is that joke about the river? It's not really a joke, no more than past is really past. The one about water never being the same water. As it flows past, the river's current, now that's a joke, is always flowing now, now, now. Past 7, when I wake from what I think is a dream where I tell the past the truth about itself. It is the present, as it always is. There is no past. Thank you.
Thank you, Maggie. Well, we've come to the part everyone's here for. We're all the most excited because Marisa Siegel is going to read to us from her brilliant, beautiful poetry collection, Fixed Stars. So everyone give your screens a wave and welcome our favorite poet of the day, Marisa Siegel. And I will read you about her many accomplishments as well. She lives, writes, and edits near New York City, holds an MFA in poetry from Mills College, like me, in Oakland. And her essay, Inherited Anger, appears in the anthology Burn It Down. And her debut poetry, chapbook, Fixed Stars, is forthcoming from Borough Press. Have you all heard? Very exciting. She is the senior acquiring editor for trade at Northwestern University Press and an editor at large for The Rumpus, where we think about her every single day. So welcome, Marissa, and thank you for bringing us all together.
Thank you, Marissa, and to everyone who read tonight. I am blessed to have such brilliant friends and terrified to read after them, but we are here to celebrate this book that's coming out on April 22nd, 2 weeks from today, and I am not going to say much else. I just want to give a shout out to Trisha Previtt, who illustrated this beautiful book. We will be doing a conversation later this month on April 27th with Lydia Yunkinovich, if you want to hear me talk about the making of this book. But now I'm going to read some poems from the book and then a couple of new poems. And I'm just going to get started because I am really fucking nervous. Okay, Skeleton Collector. The bones were buried years ago, buried yesterday. We're never really buried, and now we dig. We are digging every day, and someone is sure we've dug deeper than the bones were buried, but the bones are not there. The drawer is empty. It isn't a trick, but it isn't an accident. She had a special brush. She thought if she brushed the bones and murmured her quiet prayer, she could give them the answers. She could collect her paycheck. She could go home. But the bones are not there, and the brush, she'd had it in her hand just a moment ago, just yesterday, 10 years ago, it's gone. Fossil recorder. The moon as giant tape recorder. The moon as preserver of evidence, internal and external. The moon as recording signals, distinctive changes carved on rock. Even on the moon, there is language. If not covered up, the recorded signal is overwritten and destroyed by later events, the coverage of old material by younger material. The moon tries to protect the signal, to preserve the fossil, to develop other processes. The moon, too, buries the record. The result of this coverage is to remove surface material from further processing, from wear and tear, from the inevitable subsequent impacts that will disperse the buried material. Jesus figure. In the beginning, there was stumbling, was gasp, was need to believe. We walked around the square blocks again and again and again. Is that when the circling began? I think it began then and had already been. Even in the beginning, there was foxhole, was patch, was need for air. Trash bins knocked over, knocked around, and garbage strewn. That's when it became windy, became messy, bits of wreckage in her hair. Father figure. The scene refuses to be set. There might have been a moment when she could have climbed out, but the window was locked, or there was no window. Not afraid of heights, not afraid of climbing, not really sure what to be afraid of, so the answer is everything. Search through the records of sleeping, the ratio of dream to nightmare. Last night in a dream, I killed you. Early this morning, I killed you. The desperation shaking the air in waves. Set the scene in the bedroom, and the bedroom disappears. Tugging at the edges. Last spring, I grew sweetgrass for the cat. As sprouts shut up and bent toward the slivers of sunlight coming through the slats, I pulled one seed from the soil and considered. Roots firm to the earth, green up in the air. I tug at the worn edges of metaphor. The chrysalis begins to split, slowly opens to allow the new spring limbs a space to unfurl in the world. Okay, and now I'm going to read two new poems that are not from the chapbook. And the first one is my pandemic poem, I suppose, and it is called Pandas. Pandas. At night, while my son sleeps fierce after another day spent learning how to be human at the end of his world, I open my laptop and watch the pandas at the National Zoo. They gnaw bamboo, lumber around the enclosure. I think caged. The pandas are not graceful, but they are beautiful. Often I watch them sleep. The pandas sleep, my son sleeps, my husband sleeps down the hall. In the morning, school calls, snow day. There is no room to breathe inside this house. The pandas play in the snow. I attend to meetings in my laptop, teach my son to take deep breaths, to mute himself before becoming frustrated on screen. The pandas exist always nearby to each other on my iPhone as I text with friends, each too far from me. The sun comes up regardless. The pandas sleep. I watch my ceiling fan spin, ceaseless. Wait for the house to stir, make claim. Okay, and the last poem I am going to read is called Lesser Gods, and it is brand new. Lesser Gods, held back, gentle, unhurried, persistent, hum underneath. Intricate, amended, whetted appetite bent to patience, silent hours considered, arched brow, blanketed foot, pressure of thumb on spine, slid tongue down stomach, lash against cheek. Worth, weight, conditional. Worth discomfort, unsettle long-held habit. Do not demand. Discern delicate palm upturned, stone steady. Rear at shouted doubt till dust-settled shape emerges. Shake loose lesser gods. Hesitate. Hasty promise, candles flicker, rough kindness, its own fanned flame. Earned skin, invested elbows, skein of whispered secret. Inch from frowning grace. Reinvented reckless myth drawn, mapped landmine. Provocative argument for resolution. Mouth bloody with language. Okay, thank you everyone so much for being here tonight. I'm gonna throw it back to the other wonderful Marissa. I really am just so happy to be here with so many people I love. So thank you again.
We're all just so thrilled to be here and so proud of you, really. Just fantastic work. I'm seeing so many congratulations in the chat and so many people are so happy for you and for this book to be in the world. I do see we have one question in the Q&A box. So I'm wondering, I think we've got 4 minutes. You can probably answer this, maybe. Can you address whether the windows and other liminal spaces that recur in fixed stars came to you repeatedly without intention, or did you deliberately sort of meditate on those objects as a way of displacing or gesturing toward more direction observations? Like, how did you develop that theme, I think is the question.
I think the honest answer to that is that windows are a recurring theme in my brain. It's a word that I think about a lot. I think window and liminal space also, I mean, for me, a window is a liminal space in many ways. And yes, this is a book that is thinking about liminal spaces. So I mean, in a way, I guess, yes, I meditated on it over a period of the 20 years in which these poems were written. But I don't know if it was intentional so much as I have a few kind of core metaphors, and window is definitely one of them. So I hope that answers the question.
Isn't it interesting when you realize as a writer what those core metaphors are that you will always come back to again and again, and you just realize that, like, you think you're bored and you have nothing left to write, but there's just kind of an endless stream of, for you, maybe windows, or for other people's other things. But it's really cool when you find those things about your own writing. So